Grandmother Marie taught me 3 rules of apprenticeship in her shop on Rue des Ombres. 1. Keep your scales honest. When you are dealing in powders snatched from comet tails or salts filtered through nightmares, a single grain can invert a formula and break a kingdom. 2. Never let customers glimpse the laboratory behind the velvet curtain. They see jars labeled with gently spinning eyes or hear the clockwork sobs of bottled time, and all commerce collapses into panic. 2nd, jars labeled with gently spinning eyes or hear the clockwork sobs of bottled time, and all commerce collapses into 3. Never, ever sell a thing you have not tested on yourself first. I broke the 3rd rule because I loved a girl who kept secrets inked between the lines of her diary. Her name was Claire Dupin, and she rented the attic flat across the courtyard. Each dawn she pulled open her garret window, tilted her face to the copper sky, and began to write. I watched from the storeroom skylight, pretending to dust jars while she bent over pages, her quill carving furrows through silence. Sometimes she paused, as if listening to a voice emerging from the paper, then smiled, or shivered, or wept. The whole performance lasted an hour until the cathedral bells warned the city to work, and the garret window closed. I wanted to know what she recorded with such devotion. I wanted to climb her staircase, knock once, and beg for a single sentence. Yet I had no invitation, only longing and the half-formed confidence of a 17-year-old apprentice whose coat still smelled of burned lavender. Grandmother sensed my distraction. "There is a hunger in you," she said while we ground scales from a molting serpent. "If you intend to feed it, use a proper spoon." I misinterpreted her wisdom as permission. That afternoon, while she visited the guild treasurer, I explored the locked cabinet reserved for experiments too volatile for general trade. The shelves glowed with unlabeled bottles. The air tasted like copper and overheard lies. At the back, hidden among dusty treatises, I found a thin vial of ink, darker than any black. Its surface shimmered with faint iridescence, as if each drop contained a trapped crow beating invisible wings. A folded note lay beside it, penned in grandmother's curt hand. An hoste. I recalled Rule 3. Then I recalled Claire's diary. My pulse hammered like pestles striking mortar, while I stole a single dram into a traveling inkwell, wiped the vial's neck clean, and returned everything exactly as found. Guilt tastes sharp. Anticipation tastes sweeter. That evening I crossed the courtyard with a forged sense of purpose and the inkwell pocketed next to my racing heart. Claire answered after my second knock. Her hair smelled of autumn rain. The room behind her was cramped, walls slanted like conspirators, yet every surface overflowed with notebooks, bundled letters, ticket stubs, pressed petals, an archive of a life lived at double speed. "I'm Etienne," I managed, "from the apothecary below." "I know," she said, voice gentle. "Curious. You collect the rooftop water after storms. I can see you from here." Embarrassment bloomed, but so did courage. "I brought you something," I said, producing the inkwell. "A gift." She held it to the lamp. The ink absorbed flame until the glass looked hollow. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "It's rare," I lied. "The pigment is distilled from night-blooming squid, right smoother than moonlight. Would you let me watch you use it?" The request was indelicate, almost intrusive, yet Claire's mouth formed a relieved crescent. "I hate riding alone," she confessed. "Stay." That night, I witnessed the ink in action. Claire uncorked it, dipped her nib, and dragged a line across fresh vellum. The characters unfurled like ribbon, lustrous, alive. She wrote as if possessed, pages filling faster than breath. The lamp dimmed to a cherry coal, but the words themselves emitted faint luminescence, outlining her cheekbones in spectral blue. At last she slept at her desk. I, feigning sleep too, stole a glimpse at the topmost page. The sentence glistened. "When Mother died, the first time, the undertaker forgot to nail her mouth shut, so all night I heard her swallow memories of rain." I recoiled, heart galloping. Was this poetic invention or confession? Before I could decide, the line fluttered, yes, actually rippled. Beneath the vellum, something pulsed under the paper, like a fish trapped beneath ice. I blinked. The room snapped back to stillness. Perhaps fatigue had conjured illusion. At sunrise, I crept home, restless and exultant. The ink was no simple pigment. It enlarged reality. It vibrated with hidden topographies. If I continued supplying the potion, perhaps I would witness deeper revelations, maybe even earn permission to read. Grandmother found me polishing vials with unnecessary vigor. "The tincture of honesty is cheap," she said, inspecting my face. "Its antidote costs more," I muttered. "I took nothing of value?" "Not yet," she replied. For 6 nights I visited Claire, always under pretext of hearing her stories. Each session felt like trespassing inside another person's bloodstream. The ink coaxed confessions from her, growing stranger. Dialogues with crows who quoted scripture. A recurring dream of an ocean that swallowed cathedrals yet left their bells still ringing. The afternoon, her reflection stepped out of the mirror to ask, "Which of us deserves to live?" With every page, the letters seemed thicker, fleshy, though Claire never noticed. She wrote until her quill squealed. When her head finally sank onto crossed arms, I would reach toward the diary, hunger overwhelming prudence. And each time I hesitated, picturing grandmother's eyes cold with disappointment. The week's routine ended violently. I arrived to find Claire pallid, trembling, the diary clutched to her chest. "Something is wrong with the ink," she whispered. "The pages writhe when I turn them. They feel warm. I hear beating." I asked to see. She opened the book. The margins had softened, fibers transformed into pink tissue glistening with clear serum. Words bubbled up like welts beneath translucent skin. When she turned another page, a thin ligament, a tendon, stretched and snapped with a moist sound. The smell of salt and iron filled the garret. Claire recoiled. "What is this?" I should have confessed, begged forgiveness, run for grandmother's antidotes. Instead, I improvised. A reagent can cause parchment to bloat. We can fix it. May I borrow the diary tonight? Her terror outweighed suspicion. She surrendered the book. It was warm. I felt the faint thump of a pulse along its spine. I swaddled it in cloth and fled. Each stair creaked under newfound weight. The diary seemed heavier with every heartbeat. By the time I reached the shop's back entrance, it quivered like a frightened animal. Grandmother waited in the corridor, arms folded. She rarely raised her voice. Now it was a scalpel. "What abomination have you nursed?" I tried words. They wilted. So I unwrapped the diary. Grandmother's face hardened. I told the guild to incinerate that ink. The diary jerked, cover snapping open. Inside, sentences spasmed. A pair of words burst through the page, hanging like leeches before sliding back into punctured pulp. Grandmother grabbed surgical tongs and forceps from a tray. "Help me," she commanded. We carried the diary to the workbench. Grandmother sliced the fleshy pages free, placing each onto a silver dissecting slab. Beneath the paper's veneer lay chambers of muscle fiber mapping the paragraphs, capillaries looping through clauses. Nodes of lymph knotted at paragraph breaks. Tiny valves fluttered where commas once rested, controlling the flow of black bile that looked startlingly like ink. "The book is becoming what it describes," Grandmother murmured. "Living memoir." "The words beat," I said, mesmerized. "They're not beating," she corrected. "They're bleeding, meaning, draining Claire into itself. If we don't stop this, the diary will devour her stories first, then her memories, then the girl whole." How? Ritual excision. We must amputate the living tissue from the narrative. She prepared a scalpel of meteoric iron, dipped it in vinegar, then in candle flame. Each instrument carried its own verse of a quiet litany. Then she handed me a spool of silver thread. When I cut, you suture. The operation began. Grandmother located the diary's heart, a swollen knot around Claire's earliest entry, the day her mother died, twice. She incised the perimeter. A spurt of sepia fluid spattered my apron, sizzling like acid. The smell of old grief filled the room. I stitched frantically, closing edges where sentences gaped like surgical wounds. Each time the needle pierced, the paper squealed. No, the memory trapped inside squealed, and I experienced flashes of alien recollection, a coffin lid creaking, rainfall on tin, a child humming to silence the dead. The silver thread shimmered, sealing away thoughts not mine. Hours later, the diary lay still, bloodless, half its pages missing. Grandmother exhaled. We slowed it, but the transformation is incomplete. The ink saturates Claire's newer entries. Tomorrow, it may begin again. Then what do we do? Destroy the ink and isolate the host. She looked at me sternly. Tell the girl nothing. We need her calm. Breaking Rule 2, we dragged a cot into my attic bedroom and installed Claire there under the pretext of a gas leak in her flat. She accepted, exhausted. Grandmother administered tonics to dull her memory, and for a moment peace reigned. That night, however, the diary knocked. From the locked trunk where we had confined it, a rhythmic thud echoed like knuckles against bone. I sat vigil, fear spiraling. At midnight, the thud changed cadence. Not a knock, but a voice, dividing into syllables, using impact as Morse code. I leaned closer and discerned words tapped through wood. Bring me. T-O-H-E-R. My skin crawled. I whispered, She's safe. The diary's latch rattled. A seam split along its leather cover, sprouting a line of tiny teeth. It repeated, Bring me to her. I bolted to wake Grandmother. We returned to find the trunk cracked open, the diary gone. Disturbance in Claire's chamber told the rest. The book had squirmed to her bedside. It lay against her ribs, beating in synchrony with her heart. Veins of ink already spidered up her forearm. Grandmother hissed, It's grafting. She raised a cleaver, but I intercepted her wrist. We can't hurt her. We must sever connection before total fusion. Claire's eyelids fluttered. She heard, What's happening? Her voice was small, lost. Grandmother softened a fraction. Child, your diary is becoming you, or you it. Choose life. We remove it now. Claire shook her head. I need it. My memories. I write them so I don't drown inside them. The diary's pages flapped, emitting a wet, pleading moan. I suddenly understood. This abomination loved her, fed on her, yet protected her the only way it knew, by containing her pain within its growing flesh. If we killed it, would she be hollow? I proposed a compromise. Siphon the ink out of her, but let the stories live. Grandmother considered. Possible. We must distill the ink from blood without erasing text, she sighed, but will require the original formula, which I never perfected. I'll reconstruct it, I said, heart sinking. I caused this. Thus began the longest night of my life. Grandmother stood over Claire, muttering stabilizing charms, while the diary clung like an infant marsupial. I retreated to the laboratory, assembling crucibles, retorts, coil. The original ink had 3 legendary ingredients. 1. Essence of silence, harvested at the hour between a last heartbeat and morning's first cry. 2. Powdered glass from mirrors that never reflected the same face twice. 3. Gall of the mythical cephalopod that dreams in clouds, not seas. Grandmother had substituted more mundane analogues, breeding catastrophe. I raced to find better balances. For silence, I decanted vapor from the pocket watch of a hanged thief, stopping its hands at neither 12 nor 1, but at the unnamed minute between. For mirror glass, I shaved shards off the shop's security lens, which, due to a forging defect, showed customers smiling even when they frowned. For cephalopod gall, we possessed only dried sacks labeled suspect, but desperation outran caution. I brewed, the mixture hissed, turned opaline, then settled into blackness deeper than regret. Next, I reversed polarity through alchemical magnetism, rendering the ink a hungry vacuum instead of a voracious presence. Its purpose: attract itself, drink itself back from wherever it clung. Dawn bruised the eastern windows. I carried the revised ink, now a ghostly white, into Claire's room. She lay feverish. The diary's flesh had wrapped around her torso like ivy. Grandmother nodded. Paint the sigil of rejection. Using a quill trimmed from my own hair, I wrote across Claire's bare shoulder, "Not yours." The white ink soaked through her skin, tracing luminous letters that slid along vessels until reaching the diary. There, upon contact, the letters transformed, turning black again, and seeped inward. The diary convulsed. Veins unhooked. With a thunderclap sigh it detached, flopping onto the sheets. Claire gasped, collapsing into dreamless sleep. The diary writhed, pages sloughing off in gory curls, exposing nested sacs, latticed cartilage, and at its core, a translucent organ pulsating with liquid text. I recognized words floating inside: grief, wonder, loneliness, desire, all adrift like plankton. The book was dying. Part of me panicked, part of me mourned. Grandmother pressed the silver thread suturing needle into my palm. Finish Rule 3. Test on yourself. I opened the diary to a blank segment of still paper fiber, dipped the needle into my blood and wrote, "I accept my guilt. Let the burden be shared." Instantly, the diary's flesh cooled, settling into ordinary parchment touched by faint veins. The organ at its center crystallized into inkstone. What I'd written remained, alive, yet stable. The diary was no longer a parasite, but a communion. Grandmother exhaled relief. "It required 2 authors," she said, "a witness to carry half the weight." Claire slept 2 days. When she woke, she found me at her bedside with the restored book. I told the truth, everything. Her shock ebbed into wonder. She opened the diary. The pages were quiet, cool. Yet when she ran a finger along my confession, the letters tingled like distant thunder. "Will it hurt me again?" she asked. "Not if we tend it together." I offered her a fresh quill and the new white ink, now sealed within twin glass hearts. "We must balance each entry. For every memory you surrender, I'll contribute context. Anchor it, ensure it never hungers." "What if your memories are darker than mine?" she ventured. "Then you'll write light into them." She smiled, tentative yet brave. All stories deserve eyes willing to see. We began that evening. Claire wrote about her mother's second funeral, how the priest mispronounced her surname, how the clouds parted exactly once, allowing a coin of sunlight to gild the coffin. I followed with my memory of shop customers who begged love potions but refused to pay in vulnerability. We wove truth and witness together. The ink glimmered, warm but contained, like embers in a grate. Months passed. The diary became something beyond artifact, a living testament that pulsed only when both our hearts beat nearby. We called it the Codex Cordis Book of the Heart. Word of it spread quietly through scholarly cabals. Some offered fortunes, others whispered threats. We declined them all. Grandmother often sat in the doorway, pretending to nap while we wrote. She no longer chastised me for broken rules. Instead, she added an addendum to her teachings, which she etched on a bronze plaque above the laboratory sink. 4. Certain hungers, once fed responsibly, can transform appetite into art. On the summer solstice, Claire and I climbed to the shop's roof. The city trembled with fireworks. She opened the diary to a fresh sheet, warm with possibility. "Beneath the stars," she wrote, "Tonight I believe that when 2 people share the burden of memory, they earn the right to invent the future." I dipped my pen and responded, The future is already writing us back, line by line, heartbeat by heartbeat. The diary hummed, pages fluttering in a breeze that came from nowhere. For a moment, I thought I saw flesh again beneath the paper, but now it felt less like monstrosity and more like promise, the reminder that stories, like organs, must remain alive, nourished, and dangerously honest. Claire closed the book. Somewhere below, a church bell began to ring. Though midnight was hours away, she took my hand. "Does the ink still frighten you?" she asked. "Yes," I admitted, "but only the way thunder frightens me. It warns of storms that water the earth." She laughed softly, pressing the diary to her chest where scar met hope. "Then let's keep writing until the storm becomes a garden." We returned downstairs, the Codex Cordis beating gently between us living flesh once more, yet content, for now, to remain on the side of wonder rather than hunger. Whether it would always obey our care, I could not say, but I had learned that rules are not cages. They are bridges built across shadows, and sometimes you must walk beyond the last plank, trusting the story to grow its own path beneath your feet. As I extinguished the lantern, I heard the diary sigh, a sound halfway between turning a page and taking a breath.